Hi, everybody. We're going to get started. This is the first time we've ever had an event start on time in this place. If you want to take a seat, grab your drinks and do a thing or whatnot. This is really in my face. There we go. That's better. Hello, everyone. Thank you all so much for coming to this celebration of life for our dear friend, Charles Bailey. On behalf of the entire Atlanta Burlesque community that worked to put this together, we know he touched so many lives in so many different groups, and we are grateful that we could all come together today. After this celebration of life, we invite anyone that feels up for it to go to the Independent. Mike Tenney has reserved some tables starting at 6 p.m. for those of us that would like to continue to celebrate Charles's life. Also, as most of you probably saw on your way in, there are raffle bags. We hope we made enough, but with Charles passing, we figured everyone else could finally have one. It has definitely been noted that he passed after we found out we could no longer do raffles, so that may have actually been what did him in, because damn it, Charles. As most of you have also noticed on your way in, Charles is here. His sister Anne brought jars if anyone would like to take him with you at the end. She'll email you a copy of a certificate so you can legally have him. There is also a guest book if anyone would like to sign and say any words there if you don't feel like coming up here and saying it. And one last point of housekeeping, food is available after everyone is done speaking. If you're too sad to eat, please make a to-go plate. I literally brought an entire bag of Chinese food containers that are under the table. We are Southern, we are sad, let us feed you so we feel better. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Katya or Catherine, though I will still answer to Shar, Azure, Andrea, Lavinia, Alexandra, and every other character I ever played that was a feminine name that could have a masculine nickname, which Charles pointed out to me when I came out as non-binary almost a decade ago, because he always noticed those things. I don't exactly remember how I met Charles. Was it sneaking in to play vampire when I was underage? Because I did. Was it at a con because I'm going to those my whole life? Did it not happen until Shattered Isles? Don't worry, I was actually 18 for Shattered Isles, for those of you that remember the chainmail bra incident. Someone told me they thought I met Charles first at Dragon Con, and he told me I had to be 18 to play at the White Wolf table, and so I was too young, and I told him he was too old to be playing. I am told he thought that was funny. Sadly, he's the only one that could probably tell the story of how we met, because Charles always remembered those details. He was chronicling our lives long before he picked up a camera, and he told the best stories. Before I moved to Atlanta, I came down to LARP a lot. We would have slumber parties in Charles' living room and take advantage of his hospitality, which usually included pizza or Mexican takeout, and return the flavor when he came up to play in our Camarilla chapter. It was ridiculous, and Charles at home was vastly different than Thanatos. Charles was a nerd. Over the years, we played countless LARPs together, worked hundreds of cons, shared a love of Pokemon Go, burlesque, and even extras on film, which is how he figured out that he knew one of my coworkers, Gabby, and they both, when they realized they knew each other and both knew me, sent me a selfie and then realized they had met when he came to take pictures for us at 7 Stages where I work, because yes, he supported that too. He was amazing and loved all of the communities that came with all of those groups. Charles was there for me through many of my bad decisions as far as partners, just as I was for him. Though he hated drama, he always seemed to find the most dramatic people to end up with, encompassing the essence of opposites attract. And yes, I know a lot of you are in the audience, and I remember when you dated Charles, and we're not going to go into those details. Once he dated someone who claimed they were a houseplant, so yes, sometimes it got weird. Through everything, he would make jokes, snarky comments, and was always one of my favorite people to be petty with, because sometimes you just need those safe moments with a friend to get the horrible things out you wanted to say without hurting anybody. I don't know how to sum up a friendship that is almost 30 years old and is the majority of my life. I have literally known Charles for more of my life than not at this point, and I don't know what to do with that. When I helped fix the lights here at Red Light Cafe, which helped with photography lighting, he made a joke about my being a hero, and I said I didn't have a cape. He then brought me a cape and presented it to me at a burlesque show, because heroes need capes. He was always doing something sentimental crap like that. One time he literally brought a bucket of voodoo donuts, flew back to Atlanta, came straight to Tease Tuesday, and shared them with everyone, and a special voodoo donut doll for me. And then he sat in the front row and captured us all on stage and shared the beautiful pictures he took. He never stopped giving. He was kind, generous, an amazing friend, and I'm going to miss him terribly. But what I do know is he would want us all to remember that life is short. Eat the donut. I would like to now invite Clarissa to come up and say a few words.
Oh, wow, there are so many faces here that I know and so many of you I haven't seen in so long. Thank you, Charles. Thank you for these reunions that we all need. So I'm going to start off with a quote from Travelers. I'm not going to sit here and pretend to know what makes us who we are, but I got to figure it's more than just the sum of what we remember. That is very much Charles. He acted as a community memory. He acted as part of all of us because he was our savior. More often than not, he saved so many of us. Charles gave me a lot of credit for his hobby careers. I dragged him into Ingress. I pulled him back into photography. I pushed him into extra work, and we shared our haunt memories together. He, however, reshaped worlds with his hobbies. He always knew how to figure out how to make them profitable for him so that they paid for themselves. For the last 17 years, Charles has been my partner in crime, encouraged me to pursue the crazy dreams that I had, all of the ideas. He always has been there for the greats. He's been there for every single one of your greats. He's been there for every single one of mine. He's the godfather of my monster. His picture is there holding her from her baptism. He was her Charles. For years while I lived in Atlanta, they had every adventure they could. Together, from hiking Stone Mountain to the giant tank at the aquarium, to watching Walking Dead together. He was the enrichment we needed as a community. The people he touched, the lives he changed so many times over, thousands of phone calls. Damn it, Charles, New Orleans is never going to be the same without you. Gen Con won't be the same, and neither will LARP or Dragon Con. We all feel your absence. You loved being the center of attention. Well, this is the best party that we could throw for you. He's a catty bitch. He would talk shit at you. With the same breath, he would praise you. He loved everyone. But he's the first one to tell you if you did not look good. He is also the first one to tell you that you've got this. No matter how nervous you were or anxious you were, he's like, no, you're the power trip that the room needs. He was always my ride or die. May he ride eternal, shiny in chrome. And now I present to you Coco Rosé.
Of course, it's too tall for me. Nah. Nope, fuck it. We're here. Oh, Christ. It was the summer of 2018. I remember coming off stage, and after the show, this random white man was really excited to see me, to show me the pics he took. Keep in mind, I didn't know him from a can of paint. But Burlesque 101 is be nice to everyone. So I forced a smile and told him I was excited to see the pics. And when I got the link, my jaw dropped. Not only did I have the same amount of pics as everyone else, I was beautiful. Who took those pics? Charles, of course. It was the first time I was photographed by a non-black person, and it was fair and balanced. And every time I stepped onto an Atlanta stage, I breathed a sigh of relief because Charles was there. Once I moved to Atlanta, we started talking before shows, during intermission, after shows, and that's when the friendship began. We bonded over our love of donuts, Sublime to be specific, because I don't eat shit else, and traveling the world. Every conversation we had, I learned something new about him, and it made me cock my head to the side, because he shouldn't have been doing those things. Charles led an amazing life that was full of adventure. I am grateful for this man coming into my life. And when I hit the stage, it was my goal to make him proud, to have him in awe of me like I was in awe of him. And I remember when I finally did it. After the show, I remember him coming up to me and saying, "Wow," and I just cried because Charles had never said shit just to be saying it. Outside of burlesque, he would fuss at me when I burned the candle at both ends and in the middle. He would ask when I was going to take time to pamper myself. I'm still working on that. I put off writing these words because writing them means I have to accept there are going to be no more stories of set work, no inboxes of wrestlers he saw, no more sharing Sublime or him teasing me when he got them when I was on the road. I am honored that he decided I was worthy enough to form a friendship with. I will forever cherish every moment that we shared. And I promise to start pampering myself because now I know he's always watching me.
I have nothing written down. And that's in part because every time I sat and tried, all I could say was, "Dagnabbit, Charles, when are you going to jump out and tell me, 'Got you good, brat, didn't I?'" I've known Charles all my life, and that's because I'm his sister. Kevin's his brother. Some of you may not have known that he even had a brother and sister, but that's because he had boxes. But that was okay, because that was Charles. I spent a lot of time following in his footsteps. He was Chuck E. Cheese. I decided to be Little Caesar. He got me involved in the Rocky Horror Picture Show. We didn't get my younger brother involved because I think it would have scared him. But hey, I was there to follow him. I hear a lot about Dragon Con, and if I remember it correctly, it was the Atlanta Fantasy Fair before that. And he told me I had to come and work security with him. That was back when it was at the Omni. And we were riding elevators for hours on end. He had the more exciting jobs, though, because, I was first year. So it was just riding back and forth and back and forth. But anything to follow in his footsteps. I say dagnabbit, Charles, because We were taught young that you couldn't say anything really bad about your brothers. We'd get in so much trouble. We lost our mother when we were just going into our 20s. And at least now there's the comfort that I can see him sitting down with her and eating those chocolate chip cookies, going, na 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 na. I got them and you don't. He's been guiding me for the last 2 weeks. He led me to Catherine, Clarissa, and Coco, who was able to bring together this group because I wouldn't have known where to start. So, from Kevin and I, we thank you so much for everything that you've done. We have taken comfort in all of the amazing Facebook posts, and those will be memorialized because one thing that Charles said was he wanted to be that eclectic uncle that people just told stories about. And to my grandchildren, that's what he is. Because every time I pull up the photos and things like that, they're like, what's he doing now? Wait, that's Star Wars. Where's he at? Oh, well, he's in London at the Star Wars convention. He's working it. Wow. So again, I think that at least my 13-year-old grandson is going to follow in Uncle Charles's footsteps. So I don't know what else to say, bro. You know I'm not the public speaker of the group. By the way, yes, you were a nerd. I totally believe that story. Yes, you had a lot of friends. And just looking at your Facebook page and all of that for all the people that couldn't be here today, that just know that. And I know that you're watching. And you're guiding. And you will continue and judging. Well, wait, I mean, I can't necessarily say that, but that's, you know, no. And I say he's been guiding me. We had the discussion, there's been the discussion about the ashes. And because of an unfortunate family incident with New Orleans, the police, the remains of our dog Webster, and them thinking that it was cocaine, and a near arrest, you know, we were trying to figure out the best way to do that. But rest assured, now there's a certificate that you can take with you because he'll continue to travel. And so they're available. Like I said, we've got some containers that you can
That do not look like cocaine vials.
Exactly. And I will say this, though. I was discussing with a girl in my office about what kind of containers. And she made a comment about the Dollar Tree, and that for $1.25 we could get 4 containers. And I said, oh, but we're going to need to get some new measuring cups. And let's just say my headphones started beeping. And it was just like a beep, beep, beep. I had to end the call. And Charles was on the mantle at the time, which he never wanted to ride a mantle. But he had to be there for that particular point in time.
the best spot I could give him. So, again, he's listening. So, if at any point, just talk to him. And you just might get a response. So, again, ladies, thank you so much for everything that you've done.
Okay, I don't need this. I got a voice.
It's mostly for the people on the
Right.
live stream.
Okay, is that better? Okay, one funny story about the dog thing. Like Charles going to New Orleans. Charles and I, what people didn't know about was we lived together at the townhome after, I guess, when my mom died. I got to keep it because I was 15 at the time. So Charles and I were like two peas in the pod doing this whole thing. But what I didn't, the difference was Charles was 20. I was like 13, 14, 15. So when he was doing things that you guys were doing, I was 13. Yeah, I was kind of scared. But that was Charles. So basically, Charles and I always talked about traveling and doing things. So Charles was always telling me about New Orleans and doing everything else. So the Falcons, one year, were going to the Super Bowl. Don't know if you guys knew that. They went to the Super Bowl. I went there. Following that, and that trip was in Miami. So 2 weeks later, it was Mardi Gras. Bailey Boy had to do that. I got my dog Webster because just like Charles, we ride and die together, we travel. I didn't have a hotel, didn't have anything. Just pulled up, parked underneath the stadium. Didn't know I was in a project. Had no idea. I walked back after having a great night of standing on balconies, doing things that only Charles would probably do and that I would do. Thank God photos weren't available back then. You had those little cameras that you like that, and not cell phones. I probably would have been in trouble. But, yes, I was. So basically, Webster was on the car seat with me. I passed out. I learned one thing. If you're ever drunk, turn your car off, put your keys on the floorboard. Charles taught me that trick through this. Webster was right there. I heard a knock on the thing. I was passed out. I heard a knock. I thought I was sleeping. Woke up, there's two cops there. It was a wind tunnel. They saw that little thing there. They said, "Have you been drinking?" I said, "Yes, I have been drinking." They opened up the container. I was like, no. A little bit of Webster went flying out in the air. So that's how we got the story about the urn. And I'll just say this in closing. Charles and I, you can look at me and see him, or see him and see me, or me see him. That's just fucked up. But we were always there for each other. Even though we were apart, always there. So if I hear, it's tough for me to hear people say that he never mentioned me. Well, that was fine. I mentioned him, but my goal was he went into accounting, got a business degree. Pissed off my dad. My dad and I were like oil and water, just like Charles. I decided to go into pest control. Pissed off my dad more. So that was the fun thing about Charles and I, always pissing off Dad. So we always had conversation about that. Charles and I, we kind of like separated when I moved up to Woodstock and I left the house. He went on to do his things. But Charles always, I'll say this in closing, Charles always mentioned you guys. Never failed. I was envious. All the group here. I may have had like 5 friends, but I count, Jesus Christ, I can't count that high right now. 100 maybe. And I know there's more. His cell phone's been beeping. It's at my house. I really wish I had his code so I could tell people things, but I can't. But I'll just say this in closing. He's the brother that you never had that you wanted. And one last funny story. I was asking him, I was like, Charles, help me out here. I need to know more about you. I had some totes in my truck. The lid was doing this. I had no idea. There was a cop in front of me. I was doing about 90. If I didn't say, Charles, help me, I probably would have had a tote lid flying off in a cop car doing about 90. So thank you guys, and I apologize for that out front there a little earlier. That's not me. That's just some frustration. So thank you guys for being here, and like I said, he'll be with you guys forever. Thank you very much.
All right, now is the fun audience participation section. If there's anyone else that would like to come up and say anything, please feel free to come up, speak, say stuff, take turns, be nice to each other, and then when people are done, then you can eat some food.
It's going to be very difficult for me, but I've been knowing Charles since we were teenagers at Six Flags. A lot of the stuff that you may have heard Charles say probably was stuff that me and him came up with way back when. One of them in particular, I had to write down on my phone so I could remember exactly how it was that we said it. Now, this is actually appropriate for today, a little different. Die, die, die. May I kill you? If you are dead, please call 770-948-9290. Ask for Spurgeon. Pick up the phone. Give us a call. That was something that we would say all the time while working at Six Flags. Spurgeon Richardson was the president at the time, and that was his personal line number. These are the kind of sense of humor that me and him had. We were cut from the same cloth. If there was anybody that I could consider a brother, it would be him. When he went through his divorce, I was watching out for him during the cons because I didn't want him to get himself hurt. And when my wife died, he watched out for me at Six Flags when I was scare acting. Now, we may not have experienced every moment of each other's lives, but we were always seemed to be there for each other when we needed to be. Why that is, I don't know. But he is somebody that I have truly loved all my life and am going to miss immensely. The one thing about Charles is that we had this kinship when it came down to life, period. We treated everybody as if they were a friend that we haven't met yet. We love life. We always tried to treat people as if they were worth being recognized and their self-worth was what was most important. To make them feel like they were needed and wanted in this world. And I'm going to miss that. Because just remembering some things that happened in our lifetime, like trying to find chickens for a Joan Jett concert so they could throw them on the stage. or going to, at Six Flags, sneaking on to the back of the train so we could check out the terror train when we weren't supposed to be doing that, and I was supposed to be haunting and he was too. Things like that we were just scoundrels a lot of times. But I love that about him, and we will always have Astroworld. When Smokey and the Bandit was out, we took that trip to Astroworld, and half the side of it was filled with luggage, and the other half was filled with Coors. And we were actually, the supervisors were part of it, and they were selling it back to the people here in Atlanta. Bus driver turned his head the other way when we gave him that case too. So these are the kind of things that we done that, and you probably would expect from somebody like Charles, and to be a part of. And next time you guys think of a happy moment, that you had in your life with him, remember that Charles has always been a scoundrel. He always will be. But he would want you to, live your life that way, to have fun. That's why I always do that. I'm here today to honor a man that always believed fun is important. And my philosophy of life has always been, we are all God's children, and we all have something to laugh and sing about. If we had more laughter and singing in our lives, it would be a nice place to live in. And whether you believe in God or not, that doesn't matter either. It's just, let's have fun and live our lives so we can be better people. And that's all I have to say. And thank you, everybody. I know one thing, though. I do know that Charles is looking after us, and I know my wife is up there with him, and now I have two angels looking after me.
Who I am is not really important, and I had wrote a speech, but I guess it's more important to speak from the heart and soul. I'm closer to 50 than I am to 40, and I met Charles when I was, 15 or 16. Shout out to Shatter Isles, by the way. I was like, oh my God, I hope she doesn't remember me at all. I got the call, and the first thing I heard from someone who was dear to my heart is, I hope you're sitting down. I've had a lot of those calls at my age, and it's rough. And so I don't want to epitomize how quirky is a good term for Charles. His questionable dating life, his amazing brain, the fact that he created goddamn worlds that legends live in. But I want to say the thing that he left to me. I met him actually was here. Where did she go? I was watching the earlier speaker perform. It was the first time I started performing. Charles was here. He was like, doesn't she look good? I'm like, well, yeah. He's like, you're goddamn right. He was a perfectionist in an imperfect way. He was a realist in the way that a dreamer thinks that everything can come true. Let me tell you the one thing, my last conversation with him was, you should come out and play Nero. Now, for those who have been around since the late 80s, early 90s, Nero is something we don't really want to go back and play all that often. But this man, this myth, this legend, this epitome of what a changeling would be to dream without banality was. He made you believe. He never looked at himself as the man, which he was, which I always found hilarious. He's like, did I do good? I'm like, you're goddamn right you did good. What are you talking about? But he was that never-ending dream. I see people in walks of life that I would never have endeared to even imagine would be here today. He created legends. He created people who will live in a way that will set a pace and a beat and something to reach to. He gave us the map to become the stars that other people look at. I will always live in your shadow. And I just want to say thank you. And I hope wherever the fuck you are, you're making the worst decisions possible. I do hope that in the afterlife you're avoiding Strega and know that every goddamn person in this room and every person that they touch because of you will be better, shine brighter, and love you. Thank you, Charles.
There's a lot of faces here that I don't get to see very often. And you know who you are, and I love you. Charles was a part of my life from the time of the chamber, if some of you remember that, and was the big brother I never knew I needed. I was the underage girl sneaking into the chamber. And I was lucky to have big brothers like him and Thomas and many others that are here. You couldn't ask for a better person to watch over you and guide you and make sure you did not get taken in the back room by some creepy dude. I am lucky to have known Charles through haunting, through Dragon Con, through burlesque, and get to see all those phases throughout our lives. And I'm lucky to be able to see it with you guys. And I hope that we all keep staying together like this. I hope that we all keep living for him and keep dancing and celebrating and taking photos and scaring the crap out of people. And I just want to say thank you for all being here and being a part of such a wonderful person's life. Babies, they are safe and sound.
I first met Charles 91, 92. I'm at an age where dates are kind of fuzzy, but it was at a thing called a LARP. I don't know if you've heard of it. But he touched a lot of people in a lot of ways through different things that I didn't even realize. There are people here that I didn't even know knew him, like my friend Jaeger right there. And it reminded me of something John Donne, a poet, wrote, that we're all interconnected. Well, I'm realizing that Charles is probably the biggest thread I've ever known, connecting people together. When he made me his first night at a LARP, he told me, I see something in you that I know you don't see in you, and that's why I'm doing this. I didn't understand it then, I was 18. But I understand it now. Decades later, at a different LARP, he looked at me and said, Shadowmancer, do you trust me? I said, of course, sir. He said, Neil. He made me a night-night, stuck a spool in me and said he'd find me in the Sutherlands. And I just looked up as he disappeared and went, you fucking bastard. Well, I still trust you, Charles. I miss you. And wow, the lives you've changed. Thanks.
Most of you have no idea who I am. I'm not exactly one of Charles's closest friends and things, but also sorry, really broken up. Charles, I knew him as a photographer and as an idol. And he, as everyone can agree, he's really good at speaking, so like he makes you feel great even when you think this is the most mediocre thing you're doing right now. And I've been doing photography long, but I can say every single shot that I've taken has been inspired by him. In fact, not that long ago, he actually did a photo shoot for my partner, and he let us keep the SD card because he said he had 1,000 of them, which, knowing Charles, he probably did, just a whole drawer. And since that moment, it's been the only SD card I have used. And I know that sounds weird. He was weird too, so it works. But that's been the only SD card I've used since then. And it's my own little piece of him I don't think is ever gonna go away. So thanks, Charles, for giving a mediocre photographer a hope that one day maybe he could be as great as you. And I expect more criticisms later on. Thank you.
I always feel a little awkward about these. Speaking up here kind of feels selfish. And I always feel like it should be talking about our shared loss and not about myself. But this time I have to be honest. This is going to be about me to the degree that I must admit I would not be me, as everyone knows, without Charles. He was there and was such an influence on me in his own way that I simply wouldn't be the same person without him. I know this sounds drastic or exaggerated to some. So I'll explain with a few short stories. I won't go into stories about LARPing or burlesque or conventions, because I know there's enough other people here that'll cover those. So I'll stick to things that were just ours. First, I must note that we could never exactly pin when we first, or where we first met, even though we tried many times. This is because it happens so often and in so many different places. Every time one of us tried something new, the other one was already there, or we were both trying it for the first time. Conventions, gaming, LARPs, shows, extra work, seasonal jobs. Even if we just found random new friends, the other one was always there. It got to the point that it was a running joke. Whenever we went somewhere new, we would look for each other, even if it wasn't anywhere near town. I do remember fondly several highlights of our time together. Whether we were doing conventions as early as 1982 at Atlanta Fantasy Fair in the Old Omni, or running around Rocky Horror in the different general cinemas from North Lake, South Lake, and Acres Mill, or even when we were gaming, before Dagger and before Dragon Con, and our early Saturday mornings at Sword of the Phoenix. I remember running into movie sets and we'd bump into each other down at Georgia Tech. But later, I remember making road trips and great adventures. Usually there were 3 of us with a third wheel changing every other week. The 2 of us were always the core. I remember trips going to see my various lady friends around the area, whether it be Athens, Macon, Raleigh, Knoxville. I always had one somewhere. We even took a random trip to St. Louis where neither one of us knew anyone. He often didn't know anything or anyone about where we went, but he rode along anyway because he had his own agenda. While I was being the slut and bouncing around in all these specific places, he just simply went along because he wanted to meet people. And something I could never really understand. He went because he wanted to grow. He wanted to be. This is something so simple that I just couldn't grasp. He was, what turns out, what I wanted to be when I grew up. Sometimes I would find him companions, whether they be the sisters or the best friends of my ladies, but he would often just spend those times getting to know them and being the consummate nice guy that they needed more. And that was his way. We traveled so much that we had regular stops and regular foods and supplies. It was with Charles that my fondness for Chick-O-Sticks and peach knee-high began. Many years later, those items got nicknames of their own, and they're still joked about, but that's where they started. Anywhere that we could go to and get back within the range of one weekend was fair game. We never cared about hotels or sleeping or where we would be at any time. We were young, we had joke cola, caffeine, and sugar. That's all that mattered. One trip in particular, we watched some pretty horrific examples of bad drunk behavior, and it had us thinking, these are things that no one should ever repeat. On that day, I swore I would never do that, and he challenged me, only in the way he could. Asking me how I could make such a promise, I said I would stop before it ever got there. A few months later, we had a convention coming up, and we'd set something up that would forever affect my life and my lifestyle. As everyone knows, I don't drink. What some people don't know is that I have never had a legal drink of alcohol in my life. This is because of Charles. That day and that promise we held. At that show, I told him I would have my last drink. I saw the idea of wasting my money and my life as a drunk as something that terrified me. We went and bought some very bad tequila so that I could go out with a memorable bang. What we didn't plan on is we also bought some very bad Arby's. I don't know if it was the tequila or the salmonella that hit me first or hit me hardest. While everyone else that ate got sick, I got violently sick. And I spent the night in the hotel bathtub being babysat by two close friends. Apparently, I promised one of them that I would never drink again. Well, this is a common thing for drunks to say. I had the benefit of a friend witness it and hold me to it. That friend was Charles Bailey, the man who held my hand through my last drink and helped me hold me to that comment for decades to follow. Charles held my hand through that, and through his behavior that night, helped turn me around and inspire me in subtle ways that I try to maintain to this day. I have done my best to be everyone else's Charles ever since. I am the eternal DD, the bouncer, babysitter, and guard who stands over my friends when they find themselves in similar situations. It is a very hard role to fill because of how I got it and who inspired it. But I could not imagine my life without it, and it's a large part of who I am today. I admit that I'm not always as nice or as careful as he was, or even as patient. But I can say something in me switches immediately when I see someone who is inebriated, incapacitated, or vulnerable. The asshole side of me shuts off, and I become a better person so that person can have their own Charles. Our road trips continued for several years after that, and our friendship for decades longer. He always had a space held or guaranteed on any staff or job that I had or any trip that I took. We often would joke at the end of the show about not letting it end and just taking off on another day to drive in some random direction. We were more than friends on that. We were brothers or even twins, even though in my mind, he was always the better half of the pair. So, thank you, Charles.
What can I say about Charles that hasn't already been said? He touched the life of everybody that he came into. He always pushed me to be a better me. You know, whether it was sneaking into the LARPs underage and helping cover that fact, whether it was White Wolf or Solar or Nero, it didn't matter. He was always there. 2.5 years ago, I made the choice to quit drinking and using drugs. And Charles knew how strong how hard that was for me. And every time I saw him or we talked, he would check in on me, see how I'm doing, making sure I had somebody to talk to, somebody to be able to let it out. I wouldn't have the courage to walk up here and talk in front of this many people if it wasn't for Charles. One of my first memories of him was at a Nero event. think I was 12 at the time. And my brothers and all of their friends and the group that I tagged along with went off to go do something crazy. And everybody just overlooked me. Pretended I wasn't there or just forgot about me. What did Charles do? He turned around and asked what I wanted to do. And when I figured out something that I wanted to do, he made it happen. And that's just who he was. He didn't think about it. He wasn't worried about, you know, how much he impacted everybody's life that he came in contact with. He just did it because that's who he was. He's one of the best men I ever knew. You know, over the last decade, I've leaned on him, called him more than I talked to my own biological brothers. Because that's what he was for me. He was a big brother. You know, he didn't care how young I was. He didn't care that, you know, I was there just because my brothers had to babysit me for the weekend, so they took me to the LARP with them. He always made sure that everybody he could had a better self, better esteem about themselves, and just, he gave the support to anybody and everybody around him. And, you know, it's hard to remember all the good times. Unfortunately, there's several of them I forgot. But for any one memory I forgot, I've got 3 more better memories with him pushing me or somebody else to be a better us. Because that's all he wanted. He wanted to be the best Charles he could be. And he wanted me to be the best Cole I could be. And that was how it was for everybody he came in contact with. That's all I've got.
What was that? I love you too. I didn't plan on speaking tonight or today. Maybe it's great that I don't know what time it is, because that's probably Charles o'clock. I met Charles at Shattered Isles, and we were bitching at each other, so I don't know what that says, that the first time we met, we decided to fight in character. Charles was both the most responsible person I have ever met and the most irresponsible person I ever met. And he was a very loving person. We got along either like gangbusters or wanted to kill each other. But whatever else I will say about Charles, I will always be thankful. He gave me my Lily, my daughter, and he loved her enough not to fight with me, but be there as she needed him or as she wanted him in her life. And for that, I'm ever grateful. And later in life, or later in our relationship, we got to be friendly again. And I'm very sorry that he has passed, and I'm very grateful for what he has given me, because I have my Lily. So remember him, laugh, curse at him, and roll with it as he always did. So thank you.
I'm going to keep this very brief because I'm basically like a walking Twitter character limit because I've been crying listening to everybody. But I just know that I posted about those memorial ornaments that I've been making. I only finished 40. They have been placed in the bag, so if you do not receive one today and you would like one, I still have about 30 or so left at home that I will be finishing and mailing out to people that were not able to attend. So if you want one, you better hit me up ASAP because I have a very limited amount. Also, I love you, Charles, and I love you guys.
By the way, my wife actually sent me here to get one of those from you. Just want to make sure I get one of those. Fantastic. All right. I really didn't think I was going to come up here. I was actually just here not that long ago and for another funeral. And I chickened out coming up here for the same reason that I was about to chicken out this time. But yeah, well, the thing is, some of you know me, and those of you that actually know me probably realize I have no idea who you are. The reason for that is that when I was producing shows and being public and being out there, I was also dealing with a whole lot of depression and anxiety, and I masked that by always putting on a nice big happy face and treating everybody like I knew them, because that was a stage trick I picked up from many of the burlesque performers I had been around for most of my life. But when I was first breaking out on my own and doing my own shows, Bailey was one of the first people to volunteer to shoot. And I remember when he'd first started, he'd drug his partner in crime out. They set up the little photo booth back there, the red light, and another bar that I don't even remember where it was. And Bailey was the one that reminded me all the other places I knew him from, because I forgot. I saw one of the Nero photos there that he also used that same character at Solar, and I went, wait, that was you. I would run into him at the chamber, and he would remember me, and I'd be like, huh? And he would have to connect the dots. He was the connective tissue to every part of my nerd circles and social circles. And he was that for all of you, too. And the thing that gets me is there are only two people other than my wife that I really kind of talked about when I was getting ready to quit producing. One was Stacy, and the other was Bailey. And for those of you that only, been saying, Charles, I called Bailey by his last name because, well, you white people have run only 4 or 5 names, all right? You know, I gotta just, you know, so I would just call him Bailey because it was the only way I was guaranteed to at least remember him. And, thank you. Yeah, one other person's like, yeah, I got that too. Yeah. So, but I remember telling him when I ran into him at a burlesque show after I'd quit, and he was like, hey, why aren't you doing any shows? And I said, well, you know, I finally started taking my mental health seriously, and I realized that I was doing it because I liked the idea of it, and I wasn't getting any real joy out of it. And I was burning the candle at both ends, and I was doing it just because I felt like other people liked it, and it wasn't really, I wasn't getting anything out of it. And it was stressing me out, and I just had to do it for myself. And he went, I was like, in all the years I've known you, Q, that's the first smart thing I've heard you say. And I just laughed because it was true. And yeah, it's like one of the things that I miss. And about a month ago or even less, when I chickened out, I remember telling my friend Stacy that, you know, I was at a party that Bailey was also there, because if Stacy was there, odds are Bailey was too. But I remember telling her that, you know, you seem to know everybody. You seem to be the center of the party, and everybody seems to know you. And same's true for Bailey. But I remember she had told me at one point that, yeah, I know them, but I don't give a fuck all about me. Because she was a little maudlin sometimes, and I identified with that. Because whether I wanted to admit it or not, I was too. And I came to the funeral that you helped organize there, and I've come to this one for the same reason that, why I quit. Because I often think of myself as somebody that barely exists anywhere, and when I disappear, no one's going to remember me. And seeing things like this, hearing all your guys' stories, I think Bailey would be so frickin' proud of all of you. Because he was really good about connecting other people. Whether they liked each other or not didn't matter. Bailey was the frickin' mediating force between all of that. And I think he'd be really proud that all these folks came together to share all of this. And it kind of is a good reminder that we all need to do the same for everybody else in our life, because we touch a whole lot more people than we know. So that's it. Thanks.
Wow. We've known each other for a long time, some of us here in this room. Sorry. As I was saying, we've known each other for a long time, some of the people in this room. I don't have any I was Charles's roommate. We went on road trips. There was this great moment with me and Charles. But the thing is, for over 30 years, there was always Charles. We argued, we fought, we cussed. We could get and yell at each other to scare everyone else in the room or on site, but we knew we were there. That is the important part that I have from Charles and what I've lost. That constant, that you know that someone will be there. Charles has been there for me in some capacity for over 32 years now. Remember, you matter to the people around you, whether you realize it or not. You being there matters. If you need help, you want something, you need something, people are there. Charles was there for every one of us. Be there for your people. I love him. I'll miss him. That's it.
Is there anyone else that would like to come up, or y'all just hungry and want to eat food? I'll do one thing real fast. All right. One more. I promise this is fast.
I met Charles through my roommate, Katya. And when I found out that he was an accountant for White Wolf, I remember looking at him and going, that is the nerdiest profession I have ever heard in my entire life. I'm kind of impressed, actually. To keep this short and sweet, as Q mentioned, the connectivity of Charles and how he knew everyone. There are people in these pictures that I know that I didn't know knew Charles. Charles, I will miss going to movies on Sunday afternoon that nobody else wanted to see with you. I will miss losing raffles to you. All hail King of the Nerds. The King of the Nerds is gone.
I am yet another person who did not plan on speaking today, but here I am. There's so many stories, right? This is one person, and there's so many threads and communities and universes. There's one thing I think is really important to state as one of the burlesque dancers. Live performance is ephemeral. And Charles was an archivist who has documented years of Atlanta Burlesque. And what that has meant is that these artists have been able to go to festivals, to travel by presenting images and get booked for other work. We've been able to present our ephemeral art and gifts to the world, to social media, to other people, to share the things that we create with people who weren't able to join us in the room in those moments because of this man. who supported everybody, who showed up, who honestly was sometimes paid by producers and sometimes not, because he loved this world so much. He cared about us. As Coco talked about, he covered us all equally. And not only did he show up and take photos, but he was such a light. And also he showed up and, as we know, would buy raffle tickets. He supported us not just with his body and his presence and his art. He supported us in so many dimensions. And he had such kind words and such a great presence in everything that he did. And he is such a massive linchpin for us artists. I also had an opportunity where I got very desperate because I had a performance in 7 stages and found out that there was probably no one to cover that. And he came and covered my performance, but he covered the entire day. So he stayed for hours covering Lucy and Nicolette, me, the band whose name is completely lost. I've gone. That. Right. And Flight of Swallows, right? I mean, and he was such a. It didn't matter what you do. I was doing a weird Buto performance with a purple strap on, and he covered that. He covered Viking men in big chest pieces. That would be Valkyrie. Valkyrie, right? He just was here for the community, for the artists, for the people, and it has launched careers thanks to him. So not only is he a wonderful human and friend and family member and community member, but I think a lot of us really owe so many of the opportunities that we've had to take our art elsewhere because of this man and because of his archival work. And that is a rare gift. So one more time for Charles.
Is there anyone else that would like to say anything? All right. Wait, we got one more.
I believe in you, friends. Go come on.
Honestly, I hadn't really planned on getting up here, but I think in a way it's kind of befitting that I might be the last speaker for him tonight because, to be honest, I'm one of the people here that have shown up for him that probably knew him the least. I only really got to know Charles in about the last 2 years. Me and a couple of my friends decided to open a LARP here in Atlanta under the name of Nero. And we had our first event, and there was 18 people. We had almost as many people running the game as we had come play. Everybody there was a family member of mine or a friend or somebody I had known for years, except for Charles. He was the only guy I was like, hey, who's this guy? And he showed up and just like, hey, man, I just want to come see what you're about. And I was, we got to talking. He's a great guy. He's the type of guy that would help you out even if you didn't ask for it. I mean, he helped us out. I mean, I'd be talking with him about stuff. And he's like, I'll tell you what, man, I got something for that. Let me get back with you. I'll go ask around. And he helped us out. He got us started. I don't think our little community would be what it is without him because he brought in people, the Taylors, a lot of other people that had played in the past that, I didn't really know. I probably couldn't have reached out to or wouldn't have known to, but he did. So I've heard a lot of stories of people that know him a long time, and I wish I probably could have gotten to know him either back then or more now. But I would just like to say, some people change, during their lifetime. They're younger, they mature more, or they get away from things they did when they were children. From everything that I've seen in my past 2 years, and from everything I've heard, he hasn't changed. He was always there to help. We got to hang out a few times. He came to my house, he was always helpful. Let's be honest, he also wasn't afraid to tell you what he thought. I got quite a few earfuls from him. But unlike other people that want to argue or get some kind of way, he was always willing to listen. Even if he didn't agree with what I was doing, he would sit down and listen to what I had to say. I would listen to what he had to say, and we could always find an understanding. He was that type of guy. So I'm not a very sentimental person, especially for somebody I only knew a few years, but it hit me pretty hard when I found out. Because I remember we were at an event, and we had cleaned up. We were waiting for him to come check us out, and he showed up and sat down and talked. And as usual, he always had a story, right? The man always had a story about everything. And he would just tell us the stories, and I loved sitting and listening to him. And then he's like, all right, man, I'm out. We hugged. I said, hey, man, I'll see you next month. He said, yeah, man, I'll be there. And I had to get a message saying he had gone. So I'd just like to thank y'all for coming, and you're going to be missed, buddy.
Hey, everybody. Thank you, everyone, for saying all your kind words. When the chamber got brought up, because I used to work there, this story popped in my head, and I was actually talking about in the back. So Charles couldn't always make it to the club nights at the chamber, so he would send me with Carl, his Cthulhu doll, which a lot of you probably remember. So when I was trying to find pictures for the slideshow, I could find almost no pictures of Charles, but I have hundreds of pictures from the chamber of people with Carl for when he couldn't be there. So I'm going to see if I can try to find all those and upload them to the Facebook event, just so that way people, it's as close as probably a lot of people have to pictures of them with Charles is actually pictures with Carl.
All right. So I have one final thing to say. I want all of you to look around this room. Every single one of you, look over your shoulder, look around you. This is the biggest game of how many degrees of separation of Charles there is. It was never about degrees of separation from Kevin Bacon. It's degrees of separation from Charles. For years, I heard, damn it, Charles, or fucking Charles. Because that man is interwoven in the fabric of the Southeast United States, and it covers the world. The furthest we had to notify and make contact to people to notify of his passing has been Thailand and Tibet. The closest has been right down the street and here at home. I want all of you to know that Charles's home wasn't in whatever apartment he lived in, wasn't necessarily where he grew up, because he was the traveler. He would see the world. And he's going to continue to do so through all of you. So I want to say thank you. Please grab some food and sign our guest book. If you want to take a piece of him, just let us know, and we'll be happy to help you. Our legends never die. Charles is a legend in this group. Not only, he is a legend in our hearts. So, please understand and remember all of these faces, because we are all friends here, no matter how we feel.
Y'all go grab a donut before they're gone.
Yes.
And one of those donuts better be mine.
Then go get it.
Charles always made sure there was a donut left for me, so I don't have to do shit. There's the guest book, as well as there are raffle prizes, so everybody gets a raffle prize.
123 bags
of raffles, yes. Raffles, donuts, food, to-go boxes.
We've done all the things.
We did all the things?
You're off the clock.
I'm off the clock. Clock it out, bitches.
If I ever leave this world alive, the madness that you feel will soon subside. So in a word, don't share.